Mr. Chukwemeka, is it this? What this brings to light for me is that, this EVD has asked certain questions of ECOWAS. Mm-hmm. Were we even ripe to even think of an economic community of West African states? Because if we say that, okay, we're partnering this after, say, the European Union, for instance, they had certain things in place. I mean, yes, you're all members of a Schengen community and you can freely move from one area to the other. But there are ways of documenting movements from, of one person or an individual or a citizen of a country from one area to the other. It would seem that here, borders are a loose term. You don't have any such thing. We have really no way of documenting who is moving from where to where or who is a citizen of where.
No, but again, it depends also, and I agree with you, whether we are as ripe as EU. But EU started somewhere. In fact, you can even argue that our integration process should have been faster than the EU. Why? Because the distance is very, very close, right, from one another. However, what has now obstructed our integration process is the fact that it is easier for you to jump into the plane to go to UK than to go to Moravia. In those places, somebody can wake up from Spain and just go to The Hague to watch a football match. And that gives them a sense, because at that point, you don't even need your passport, because you're already within the Schengen countries. Mm-hmm. You don't need your passport again. It makes no meaning. But here, there are certain policies that we do not even want to wait for any approval to start operating. For example, if I go to Ghana, I live in Ghana, I need work permit in Ghana. Recently, Ghana introduced what they call non-citizens identity card. It doesn't matter whether you're an ECOWAS citizen, it doesn't matter whether you're a Chinese citizen. In Nigeria, if we land here, we have Nigerian citizens and other nationals. We don't even have our own ECOWAS line. In Liberia, we are all called visitors. Visitors. The same way a Chinese, a Dutch is addressed, that's the same way I'm addressed. So, in 1975, when we talked about this integration process, what were we thinking about?
That's why she asked the question, because 1975, we are even older than the than the EU, than the European Union. The European Union is was just founded in the 90s. So 75, ECOWAS, and she is saying that perhaps it would seem that all of that time, all of those years, we were not prepared. We were just like a body of union of where countries with similar borders without putting some of these in place that you've just highlighted.
Yeah, but the way to go about it is not to say we're not prepared. It's to face the challenges. For example, they are beginning to now construct a road from Abidjan to Lagos. We didn't have that before. But beyond that, we need rails. If everybody knows that once you construct a rail line from Accra to pass through Lome and pass through Cotonou and Lagos, you have just provided a means for our people's poverty level to be alleviated. On a daily basis, there are Nigerian women that from Lagos to Accra just come to sell vegetables. They face all different kind of things at the border. And that is why, because they face all those challenges at the border, they take other routes.
Let us be very honest and very candid. We know that, all fingers in this West African region, they're not equal.
Same as EU.
Yes, but there's a saying that, if eating together is not sweet, if one person doesn't have, there are countries in the West African region that cannot bring anything to the table. And so you find out that, some will have to keep playing Big Brother role. That's why you keep getting, in countries like Ghana, someone saying that you need non-citizens identification card, because they still need to be able to identify who are Ghanaians and who are, their brothers from neighboring countries. Do you think that we need to properly delineate what we call borders? If we're saying that, okay, this community was divided in two, then maybe it is time we say, okay, this community, where do you really want to belong? So we can say, this is Nigeria, this is Ghana, this is Togo, this is Benin Republic. Then we can now begin to merge from those particular areas. Or what do you think?
But sovereignty already exists. Nobody's questioning any country's sovereignty. However,
sovereignty that nobody respects?
No. The act of, you see, what happened in the past, if you're looking at our history is such that, like I told you, the Berlin Conference that simply demarcated West Africa along the colonialists did not even consult West Africans, right? So what some of these things are doing is to remind us of those artificial nature that exist. However, I agree that all countries in West Africa are not equal. But it is not also true that they have nothing to offer. There is no country, and it has been proven, there is no country in West Africa without natural resource that is unique to it and that is enough to cater for its citizens. What has happened is the kind of governance and the kind of leadership deficit that we have had over the years. Whether it is the Liberia we are talking about, the timber in Liberia that was stolen, the resources that was stolen under Charles Taylor is enough to sustain the country for the last couple of years. What about Sierra Leone? Sierra Leone is considered now one of the emerging economy in West Africa. But how is the governance going? There's already a dancing step of the president, whether he wants to leave power. Those are the things that set us back. What about Cote d'Ivoire? Cote d'Ivoire was already on the verge of unleashing its potentials before the 2011 conflict came. What about Nigeria, that is supposed to provide the leadership? Nigeria is supposed to provide the leadership.
I think I still go with Margaret's argument here. It still would seem to me that we're not ready. The issue of security, now you took us through memory lane, those countries that have actually gone into one form of crisis or the other that borders on security and how they've not been able to handle it. And now we're getting to even see a taint of it here in the country, talking about Nigeria. And if you tie that to what health issues we are seeing in the subcontinent, it leaves one but not to worry. Because if you look at what we just highlighted about EU 1993, and we have seen the progress so far to the extent that even having a single unit currency and so many other issues that they have come to bring forward for that particular member states, we haven't seen a lot of that recorded so far from our ECOWAS states. So with the Ebola outbreak and security issues now, there's just before we get into 2015, how well, away from the road network, which will definitely aid commerce, business, and free movement of persons, we're looking at security and health now, which are two key issues that the body has to tackle. Are they doing anything in that you know of?
Now, first of all, you know that in 1975, when the ECOWAS was formed, it was formed on the background for economic integration, right, and trade. And the idea, as at that time, nobody envisaged that you will have intrastate conflicts. So they were not even prepared for the intrastate conflict that started happening in the 90s, in Liberia, in Sierra Leone, in Guinea, and later on in Cote d'Ivoire. Apart from Nigeria that already had its civil war that was unique in its own nature, there was nothing like intrastate conflict, bordering on chieftaincy, bordering on governance, bordering on natural resource violence, and so on and so forth. But you can also argue that if we did not have ECOWAS, how would Liberia have come out of that war? As bad as ECOMOG process was at that time, because there was nothing planned, there was nothing. Nigeria just took a template from nowhere and intervened. Because, to be very honest with you, I'm not sure that international community want to intervene in countries where there's no interest. So the question would be, what would have been their interest in Liberia at that time?
What about the African Union or the OAU at the time?
The OAU in itself also is part of the issues that we continue to raise, because there's a coordination problem between the African Union and its RECs. The RECs are supposed to be the building blocks of the African Union. But up till now, there's no template to say what nature is this building. Because it differs. SADC is different totally from ECOWAS. ECOWAS, on paper, have the best protocol on the continent, which is why they are quicker to respond to issues of coup d'etat, for example, in Mali. Because all they did was to apply the protocol on democracy and good governance. And we said zero tolerance. But if it is in southern region, South Africa that was supposed to provide the leadership, as at then, did not even have independence, as it were. So, up to today, then Zimbabwe, Mugabe did not also have the moral justification to provide any form of leadership. So up to today, you cannot say this is the protocol that will govern whatever takes place in SADC. But beyond that is the fact that whether it is in Eastern region, Central Africa region, West African region, we have all different peculiarities. And that is also affecting the way African Union is functioning.